Before we start this video, I have a confession. I was an anime fan. I mean, I still am, but I was growing up too. I was very enthusiastic and kind of weird about it. And if I'm being honest, I guess I still am. Maybe you can relate. You've loved Japanese media for most of your life. You've never been to Japan, or at most, maybe you've been 1 to 2 times for a cool vacation. Maybe you've read a couple of non-fiction books about the country, learned a few words or phrases, and most of all, you love the idea of the culture, but since you've never lived there, you've learned most of what you know about it through TV and film. Now that I've outed myself as an adult anime fan, I also want to tell you that I am an art professor, so let's put this whole Western anime fan thing in a more global and historical context. In North American art history departments, we don't tend to talk about the influence of anime as much as we should, but we all know Japanese pop culture is important. It's been shaping Western art for a couple of centuries now. So let's be honest, Japanophiles, to differing degrees, have existed for about as long as Western people have been exposed to Japanese art and culture. So let's talk about this with a case study. Vincent William van Gogh, who I'm going to call Vincent for the rest of this video because my Dutch pronunciation game is weak, was a painter with questionable social skills. You might have heard of him before. This guy may seem like an unlikely figure to associate with today's anime fans, but he's our poster child. Our weeb great-great-grandfather, if you will. He was obsessed with Japan even though he didn't know a thing about it beyond the art he looked at. He also had no friends, was kind of weird, couldn't keep a job, and was rather obsessive with his interests. This may or may not sound like some anime fans you know.
All my work is based to some extent on Japanese art.
While there are a few earlier instances of people from the West visiting Japan and becoming obsessed with it, Vincent was not one of these people. He didn't visit the country, and instead he loved the idea of Japan that was uniquely of his own making. His fascination with Japanese art and his incorporation of it into his own style echoes the enthusiasm of many non-Japanese anime fans today, and we're going to use his own words, drawn from his letters to friends and family and fellow artists, to better understand him in this way. Vincent's journey into the world of art began in the late 19th century. He was born in the Netherlands and started work at age 16. He took on various jobs, all rather unsuccessfully, before becoming an artist. He was an art dealer, teacher, preacher, bookseller, and even a missionary. Though it was during his last job as a missionary in Belgium that he was really forced to reevaluate his life and his choices. In a religious fervor, he got rid of all of his worldly possessions and gave them all to the poor. This sounds like typical church stuff on paper, but the church he worked for was like, nah, that's too literal of an interpretation of the Bible, and you're going too far, Vincent.
They think me a madman because I wanted to be a true Christian. They turned me out like a dog, saying I was causing a scandal.
So he decided to become an artist, because surely his passion and dedication would be appreciated in that field. However, Vincent only worked as an artist between 1880 and 1890, but it was a productive decade for him. During his time as an art dealer, he decided that he enjoyed the art of his homeland, but he also was a big fanboy for French painters too, specifically Jean-François Millet and Camille Corot. For the first half of his decade as an artist, from 1880 to 1885, he allowed this combination of Dutch-French inspiration to shape his aesthetic choices. But that was to change. By 1885, Japanese goods were flowing into Dutch ports, and the idea of an exotic and mysterious nation on the other side of the world was taking over. There wasn't much information to put this new art in context yet, but it was exciting. One day while working in the Belgian port city of Antwerp, Vincent encountered cheap Japanese art prints for the first time, and he was hooked. He described the docks as teeming with fantastic, singular, strange Japanese wares which captivated his imagination. Japanese woodblock prints and other art forms like ink and brushwork were still new to Europe at this point, and Vincent was intrigued. He wanted to be an early supporter and dealer of this type of art. While the Dutch had a long, ongoing trade relationship with Japan, which began in 1600, trade relationships were opening up all across Europe for the first time. By the late 1800s, France was where interest in Japanese art and culture was really taking off, so Vincent knew what he had to do. In 1886, he blew all of his rent money, purchased 660 Japanese prints for a few cents apiece, and then moved to France to live with his more financially responsible brother Theo. He was confident that he could make all of his money back and then some on this awesome new super trendy art that he was incredibly passionate about. So that year, Vincent held an exhibition of the prints he purchased in a cafe in an attempt to sell them to the public. But it didn't work out. While most of his artist's acquaintances enjoyed Japanese art and incorporated its influences into their work, they didn't see the need to buy Vincent's cheap prints.
The exhibition of Japanese prints I had at the cafe had quite an influence, but it was such a disaster.
Although he failed to resell the prints, yet another job he was not good at, by the way, he was happy to keep them, and he used them for inspiration by pinning them to the walls of his own studio.
My studio's quite tolerable, mainly because I've pinned a set of Japanese prints on the walls that I find quite diverting. You know, those little female figures in the gardens or on the shore, horsemen, flowers, gnarled thorn branches.
These are actual archival images of Vincent's collection, held in the collection of the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam. All these little pinholes on them are from Vincent tacking them up on his walls. These prints played a significant role in shaping his artistic style from then onward, with their direct influence evident in the background of several of his painted portraits. Most of the prints that Vincent owned and collected were yakusha-e, or actor prints, which portray actors from kabuki theater. They were highly popular among well-to-do Japanese theatergoers who avidly watched kabuki performances and collected these portraits of their favorite actors. These prints contributed to the actors' fame and made them the most common subject in Japanese printmaking. When Vincent looked at these images, he was looking at actors from the other side of the world in performances that he'd never see. It's unclear if he even understood this bit of cultural context, but he appreciated this art anyway. Guilty as charged, by the way. I used to do this in the 90s with any anime merch I could get my hands on, so I can't criticize him too hard on this front. Despite his lack of knowledge about Japan, Vincent's exposure to Japanese art allowed him to adopt techniques and images that would become integral to his own artistic evolution. He experimented with strong contour lines, curious use of perspective, large flat areas of color, decorative patterns, and everyday subject matter, which he observed in these Japanese prints. Sometimes he directly copied these prints too, but other times he just took ideas from them.
You could get an idea of the change in painting if you think, say, of the colorful Japanese pictures that one sees everywhere. Landscapes and figures. Theo and I have hundreds of these Japanese prints.
Despite his die-hard enthusiasm, he wasn't the only person into Japanese art at this time, as I've mentioned. Vincent and his artist acquaintances called their Japanese-influenced art style Japoniseri, or Japonisma. Japoniseri refers specifically to the artistic imitation of Japanese style, whereas Japonisme encompasses more of a wider cultural exchange between Japan and the West. Vincent waffled between these two things at times. In 1888, Vincent moved to the south of France to start an artist commune, leading to a period in which he immersed himself in what he called a Japanese dream. The south of France might not be Japan, but that certainly didn't stop him from saying or thinking that.
I don't need Japanese prints here, because I'm always saying to myself that I am in Japan here. That as a result, I only have to open my eyes and paint right in front of me what makes an impression on me.
Unfortunately, Vincent didn't have many artist friends, and he wasn't great at keeping the ones that he did have due to his ongoing bouts with mental illness, so his whole commune thing didn't really work out, and he had a mental breakdown by the end of the year. He died the next year in summer 1890, leaving behind many unsold paintings and hundreds of Japanese prints. Vincent's deep appreciation for Japanese art resonates with the passion of contemporary anime fans on a few levels. Just as anime enthusiasts today are drawn to the vibrant colors, expressive characters, and the more fantastical elements of anime, Vincent found inspiration in the unique aesthetic qualities of Japanese woodblock prints. His love for Japanese art not only influenced his style, but also affected his perception of color, composition, and subject matter. These prints changed how he saw and understood the world, even if, like many contemporary anime fans, he was just imagining many of the Japanese cultural details that he wouldn't have been able to interpret any other way. After all, most of us can't just pack up and live somewhere else to get an authentic cultural understanding of a place we admire, though of course the internet gives us less of an excuse to make stuff up about other societies than, let's say, in 1890. In recent decades, Vincent's admiration for Japan is less one-sided, with many Japanese viewers, historians, and artists appreciating European art, and even his work in particular. In 1999, Japanese architect Kisho Kurakawa designed a wing for the Van Gogh Museum that's still in use today, and Vincent's artworks have even traveled to the nation that he loved the idea of. His work now inspires Japanese artists. As a matter of fact, the Van Gogh Museum is currently holding an exhibition inspired by the Pokemon franchise, which not only creates opportunities for scalpers to hoard limited edition merchandise, but also further illustrates the cultural relationship between Japan and Western Europe. Vincent's affinity for Japanese aesthetics offers a glimpse into the profound impact that art from one culture can have on an artist from another. Similarly, today's anime fans, even those who have never been to Japan, are captivated by the visual allure and storytelling of anime and manga. Many of these fans even feel compelled to make their own art to try and understand why they're so attracted to the style. If this is where you're at as an artist, just don't forget to find a way to make your Japanese-inspired art your own after you're done learning and copying from it. Use those bright colors, flowing outlines, and little details in a new way that connects with who you are and how you see the world. And remember, Vincent's work is uniquely his own because it's a combination of Dutch, French, and Japanese art with his own choices thrown in too.
I've also done a new portrait of myself, as a study, in which I look like a Japanese.
Some of the influences were stronger than the others in the mix. At any rate, Vincent's admiration for Japanese art, which is reflected in his own fan art, studies, reminds us of the power of cross-cultural artistic exchange and the enduring influence of Japan's rich artistic traditions. Thanks, Japan! Thanks for watching until the end. We really appreciate it. If you'd like to hear more from us on topics like art, anime, and games, we'd really love to hear from you. Just say hello or ask a question in the comments, show your support with a thumbs up, or even consider subscribing. Bye for now.